Ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you something right now. Going silent, disappearing, vanishing into thin air, that's not always the power move you think it is. No contact. Yeah, it has its place. It gives space, it creates mystery. But let me ask you this, what's the point of no contact if your energy still screams that you're waiting for him to notice? Silence without purpose is just noise dressed up in pride. You want to make him feel it, then don't just disappear. Elevate. Silence without self-growth is just emotional waiting. Many people believe that simply cutting someone off, not responding to messages, and going completely silent will automatically create impact. But the truth is, silence by itself doesn't change anything if your mind and heart are still stuck in the same place. You can delete the messages, block the number, remove the pictures. But if you're still checking their status, wondering what they're doing, or hoping they'll notice your absence, then that silence is just a costume. You're not truly moving on. You're just pausing the conversation externally while continuing it internally. When you decide to go silent, it has to be backed by something deeper. You need to use that silence to reflect, to grow, and to evolve. Otherwise, you're just putting time on hold, hoping they'll come running back. And that's not power. That's waiting. Emotional waiting looks like pretend to be strong on the outside, but breaking down every time you hear their name. It looks like telling your friends you're done while secretly hoping they'll message you first. That's not self-respect. That's emotional dependency in disguise. Real silence, the kind that shifts things, is the silence that comes when you've made a decision to choose yourself. It's not about playing games or trying to manipulate someone into missing you. It's about getting honest with yourself, asking the hard questions. What did you learn from the relationship? What parts of yourself were you ignoring to keep someone else comfortable? What patterns do you keep repeating? That's what silence is for. Not to punish them, but to discover you. People who use silence as a tool for growth don't just disappear, they transform. While others are waiting for a text, they're reading books, going to therapy, building habits, reclaiming their energy. They aren't watching the phone ring. They're building a life that no longer revolves around who calls and who doesn't. That's the difference. Silence isn't a strategy if it's rooted in pain and pride. It's only powerful when it's fueled by healing and self-awareness. When you're using no contact as a weapon, it backfires because deep down, you're still chained to the outcome. You're still emotionally invested in what the other person thinks, feels, or does. But when you grow during the silence, really grow, you start to care less about their reaction and more about your own evolution. You stop checking their page, not because you're forcing yourself, but because it no longer serves the version of you that's emerging. Silence has the potential to be sacred, but only if you honor it. It becomes sacred when you use it to rebuild your confidence, reset your boundaries, and remember your worth. Not when you use it to get a reaction or prove a point. A growth makes the silence meaningful. Otherwise, it's just another form of emotional waiting dressed up like empowerment. No contact only works when your energy no longer chases. It's easy to cut someone off on the outside while your thoughts are still running after them every day. You might block them, mute their stories, delete their pictures, and tell yourself you've moved on. But if every silent moment is filled with hopes that they'll come back or notice your absence, then your energy is still chasing. True no contact isn't just about the absence of communication. It's about the withdrawal of emotional investment. It's when your heart stops reaching for someone who didn't reach back. People often think that by going silent, they've taken their power back. But if that silence is just another way to manipulate or wait for a reaction, then it's still a form of chasing. Chasing isn't always physical. Sometimes it looks like rehearsing conversations in your head, stalking their social media, or attaching meaning to every little thing they do online. That's still you chasing their validation, their attention, their love. That's not peace. That's obsession wearing a quiet face. There's a difference between space that heals and space that hopes. Healing space is where you focus inward, where your attention returns to your own needs, your dreams, your mental and emotional health. Hoping space is where you sit in silence checking your phone, interpreting silence as a sign that something is coming. That's not growth, that's limbo. And the only way out of that limbo is to stop chasing them with your energy. When your energy detached, you feel it. You stop caring about their next move because you're too focused on your own. You no longer check if they watch your story because you're busy writing a better one for yourself. Your energy becomes still, routed calm, not because you gave up, but because you grew up. It's a quiet power, the kind that doesn't need to shout or prove anything. That kind of stillness sends a message louder than any text or call ever could. No contact becomes real when you stop reacting internally. When their name no longer triggers anxiety. When a memory pops up and you no longer feel the urge to relive it. When you stop trying to decode their behavior and start decoding your patterns. That's when your energy is no longer chasing. It's resting, healing, redirecting. You begin to realize that detachment isn't cold or cruel. It's clarity. It's what happens when you finally see things as they are, not as you wish them to be. You don't get there overnight. It takes discipline to redirect your mind every time it drifts back. It takes self-love to prioritize your peace over the temptation to reach out. But eventually, you reach that place where you're not pretending anymore. You're not faking indifference or trying to be strong. You're just done. Your energy stops moving toward them and stops flowing back into you. That's the moment no contact becomes a choice for yourself, not a tactic for them. The real flex is choosing yourself, not just leaving him on read. So many people think strength is in the silence, in ignoring texts, in acting like they don't care. But real strength is in the internal shift, the moment when you decide to stop waiting, stop hoping, stop begging silently through your energy for someone to see your worth. It's not about leaving someone on read to prove a point. It's about realizing that you don't even need to open the message anymore because you've already opened your eyes. When you truly choose yourself, it doesn't feel like a game. It feels like peace. Choosing yourself is not about revenge or ego. It's about recognizing the pattern of putting others ahead of your own emotional needs. It's waking up one day and saying, I matter too. It's finally hearing that inner voice that's been whispering all along, telling you this situation isn't serving you. This attention isn't love. This connection isn't nurturing your soul. But most people don't listen to that voice because they're afraid of being alone, afraid of losing what little they're getting, even if it comes with pain. The truth is, when you leave someone on read, but your heart is still clinging to them, you haven't chosen yourself. You've just paused the cycle. Real growth is when you start responding to your own needs instead of reacting to theirs. It's when your boundaries become sacred, not situational. You stop explaining yourself. Stop trying to convince someone of your value. Stop shrinking yourself to fit into someone else's comfort zone. You begin to expand to your full self unapologetically. The strongest move a woman can make is not to go silent just to get noticed, but to go silent because she's finally listening to herself. She starts showing up differently. Her glow doesn't come from makeup or filters. It comes from no longer carrying the weight of unreciprocated love. It comes from the freedom of letting go of what was never meant to be held onto. And that kind of energy can't be faked. It's magnetic, it's powerful. It's untouchable. Choosing yourself is also uncomfortable because it often means letting go of the fantasy. It means seeing the reality clearly, even if it hurts. But the beauty in that pain is that it gives birth to your next level. You start to see that you were always enough. You were just pouring your energy into the wrong places. And now, instead of trying to prove yourself, you're pouring that energy back into your growth, your peace, your purpose. That's where the transformation happens. When your validation no longer comes from who's texting you, who's watching your stories, or who's saying all the right things, but doing nothing real. It comes from how you feel when you look in the mirror and know you didn't abandon yourself this time. You didn't wait around hoping to be chosen. You made the bold, quiet, and life-changing decision to choose yourself. Peace, progress, and purpose are louder than any text. People often underestimate the power of quiet transformation. They think silence is weak, that if you're not speaking or reacting, you're losing. But the truth is, when you're building yourself, when you're focused on healing, growing, and evolving, your absence speaks volumes. There's nothing louder than a woman who no longer seeks validation through conversation, but finds confidence through elevation. You don't need to send long paragraphs or dramatic goodbyes when your life becomes the message. When you begin prioritizing peace, everything changes. You stop chasing closure because you realize peace is better than answers. You no longer obsess over what could have been or what went wrong. You start choosing environments, relationships, and habits that support your healing. Peace becomes your standard, not your reward. You guard it like it's sacred, and you refuse to let anyone disrupt it, no matter how much history you share. Because once that you taste the calm that comes from walking away from chaos, confusion starts to lose its appeal. Progress, on the other hand, doesn't need an audience. You don't have to announce every step forward. Just take them. Start waking up earlier, taking care of your health, building your future. Go to therapy and take that class. Work on your dreams. That kind of progress creates an energy that speaks without words. It shows up in your posture, your smile, your presence. It makes people wonder how you got through what did and came out even more radiant. That's what makes silence powerful. Not because you said nothing, but because you built something while saying nothing. Purpose is what gives all of it direction. When you reconnect with your why, you stop wasting energy trying to understand someone who didn't value you. You begin to see that your life has more meaning than waiting for a message or replaying old conversations. Your focus shifts from what they think to what you're becoming. You tap into something bigger than your pain, your potential, and suddenly the need to be heard by someone else is replaced with the desire to listen to yourself. Purpose doesn't scream. It whispers. And when you start following it, everything else starts to align. You don't need to update people with what you're doing. Let them see the shift. Let them feel the difference in your energy. Let them notice the glow they once took for granted. Because when you truly embrace peace, commit to progress, and walk in purpose, you become unforgettable. Not because you tried to be, but because you dared to grow in silence. That kind of energy doesn't chase, it attracts. It doesn't demand, it commands. And no message, no explanation, no emotional outburst can ever compete with the silent transformation of a woman who decided to become her best self without needing applause. Glow up mentally, emotionally, and spiritually, not just physically. It's easy to focus on the surface, to change your hair, upgrade your wardrobe, hit the gym, and take beautiful pictures. But real transformation starts on the inside. The most powerful glow up is not the one that turns heads. It's the one that turns your life around. When you start healing from the inside out, your entire energy shifts. You no longer seek approval because you've finally given yourself permission to be enough as you are. You stop performing confidence and start living it. Mental growth means you stop letting your thoughts control you. You learn how to observe your mind, not obey it. You recognize old thought patterns, the ones that kept you doubting your worth, replaying conversations and reliving pain. You replace them with beliefs that serve you. You begin setting boundaries not from anger, but from clarity. You learn to say no without guilt. You stop explaining yourself to people who never intended to understand you. You become aware of how much peace you've given up just trying to be accepted, and you reclaim it one thought at a time. Emotional glow up is when you stop reacting out of pain and start responding from power. You don't let your emotions run the show, but you don't suppress them either. You feel everything fully, the disappointment, the hurt, the loss, but you don't let them define you. You use those emotions as signals, as messengers, as teachers. You begin to recognize emotional triggers not as signs of weakness, but as opportunities to heal. And that healing becomes your new emotional home. Instead of waiting for someone else to validate your feelings, you sit with them yourself, understand them, and release them. Spiritual growth is what ties it all together. It's not about religion, it's about alignment. It's about reconnecting with yourself on a deeper level. You start to understand that you are not your experiences, your heartbreaks, or your past. You are the awareness behind it all. You begin to trust the timing of your life. You stop forcing things to happen and start flowing with what's meant for you. You tap into your intuition, that quiet voice that always knew what you needed, even when you didn't want to listen. You stop asking, why me? And start asking, what is this teaching me? That's the kind of glow that can't be captured in a photo. It radiates from your peace. It shines through your choices. It transforms your presence. People start to feel it when they're around you, even if they can't explain it. You become a different version of yourself, softer, stronger, wiser. And the best part is, you're not doing it for revenge or to be seen by the person who hurt you. You're doing it because you finally see yourself, because you deserve to feel whole without needing anyone to complete you, because the woman you're becoming is no longer trying to be chosen. She already chose herself. Make your absence unforgettable by making your life undeniable. There's a kind of power that doesn't come from confrontation or explanations. It comes from transformation. It's not about proving your worth words, but with the life you build in silence. When you stop trying to get someone to see your value and instead focus on becoming everything they took for granted, your absence starts to speak for you. They may not notice your silence at first, but they will feel the shift when you stop orbiting around their world and start creating your own. Your absence becomes unforgettable when it's backed up by undeniable growth. When you disappear and return with peace, purpose, and progress, it creates an impact that words never could. Because people remember the ones who evolve, the ones who rise, the ones who go through the fire and come out shining. You don't have to announce that you've changed. Let your energy say it. Let your discipline, your peace, your new standards do the talking. That's how you become unforgettable. You don't chase closure. You create distance and fill that space with greatness. When someone expects you to stay stuck, to wait, to hope for their return, and instead they see you rising, glowing, moving differently, it disrupts their comfort. Not because you're trying to get back at them, but because you're finally choosing you. That disruption is not loud, but it is powerful. Because growth is undeniable. It changes your presence, your energy, your mindset. It shows in the way you speak, the way you carry yourself, the way you no longer entertain what used to break you. Being unforgettable isn't about being dramatic or proving you're better. It's about becoming so focused on your own evolution that your life becomes a testimony of strength. You don't need to make noise when your peace makes a statement. You don't need to beg anyone to see your worth when your actions reflect how deeply you've come to value yourself. That's where the power lies, in the stillness and the consistency, in the quiet commitment to become the best version of who you are. The person who hurt you, doubted you, or overlooked you will eventually feel your absence, not because you vanished, but because they can no longer reach the version of you once had access to. You elevated, and elevation creates separation. That's not bitterness. That's growth. The same energy that used to be focused on them is now invested in your dreams, your healing, your joy. You become hard to forget, not because you were loud, but because you became untouchable in your discipline and unshakable in your peace. The beauty of making your life undeniable is that it no longer matters who recognizes it. The power is in knowing you did it for you. You turn the pain into power, the silence into strategy, and the absence into transformation. You became unforgettable not through force, but through focus. Not through revenge, but through rebirth. Not by shouting your worth, but by showing it in everything you do. Healing is the loudest message you'll ever send. People think silence is the statement, that cutting someone off or walking away without a word is what leaves the biggest impression. But it's not. The real message is in the healing that follows. It's in the way you choose to show up after the pain, in the way you pick yourself up, in the way you learn to smile again without needing anyone to validate that smile. Healing sends a message that no argument, no text, no explanation ever could. It's the declaration that you're no longer available for what once broke you. Healing changes your posture. It changes the way you speak to yourself and about yourself. It shifts your standards, your expectations, your entire vibration. You stop repeating old patterns because you're no longer seeking love through pain. You begin to recognize what peace feels like. And more importantly, you refuse to trade it for temporary attention. That inner shift is louder than any confrontation. When someone sees you after the storm and realizes you didn't, you transform. That's the message they never expected to receive. When you heal, you stop needing people to see your pain in order to validate it. You don't have to prove how much you were hurt or how deeply you were affected. You let go of needing them to understand because you've already started understanding yourself. That's where freedom begins. You stop chasing apologies and start giving yourself closure. You stop hoping for them to regret it and start focusing on your own recovery. The silence that once felt empty becomes sacred. It's filled with growth, reflection, and rebuilding. There's something powerful about a person who heals in private. They don't make a show of their progress, but you can feel the shift. They stop showing up in the same places. They stop responding to the same triggers. They stop chasing the same validation. They start pouring into themselves. They start doing the things they said they would, not because they have something to prove, but because they finally believe they're worth it. That quiet, steady transformation becomes impossible to ignore. Healing is not glamorous. It's messy. It's painful. It's full of setbacks and tears and moments where you almost reach back out. But every time you choose to stay on the path, every time you journal instead of text, every time you pray instead of beg, every time you take care of yourself instead of waiting for someone else to do it, you're sending a message. You're telling the world and yourself that your peace matters more than being right, your growth matters more than being understood, and your future matters more than your past. That message echoes. It lives in your smile, your peace, your choices. It shows up in the people you attract, the energy you protect, the dreams you finally chase. Healing becomes your reputation. People remember the way you held yourself together, the way you didn't fall apart publicly, the way you came back stronger, softer, and more whole.